we all grew up as comics fans going, man, if I ever got to play with these toys in the toy box, here's this kind of thing that I would do with it. Do you have any stories like that, or do you have any particularly rewarding stories of working on franchise characters that maybe you didn't even have that much of a relationship with, or a deep-seated love for, that turned out to be incredibly meaningful to you, or you really got to do some fun stuff with?
So when I was a kid, my dad did not like comics. He was not into comics, but he liked collecting comics. He liked going to conventions with me. He liked wheeling and dealing with the dealers, and one of the things he wanted to do is, he said, what comic do you really want to collect all the issues of? And I said, well, how about X-Men? And he was like, all right, we're going to collect X-Men. So my dad and I, over the course of several years, got every issue of X-Men. And thank goodness for my dad, he would go in and he'd negotiate these crazy deals, and he'd buy tables. So the dealer would have a table full of X-Men. He said, how much for the table? And I'm like, and that was something my dad and I had together. So flash forward years, later, and I'm working for Marvel, and even at this point, even weeks before, I'd said to myself, there's never a chance I'm going to be writing Uncanny X-Men. That's just not a book I'm going to write. I just know Marvel won't hire me to write it. And then they hired me to write Uncanny X-Men. So the fact that, and there was some discussion in the room when we were doing maybe we're going to change the names of these books. And I said, well, I tell you what, you can change the names of the books. This isn't a threat, because you can find anybody who will write it, but I'm not writing it if it's not Uncanny X-Men. You can find someone else. That book to me means a lot, because it was something my dad, and it's, to this day, one of my biggest regrets is my dad, because he passed away the year before that happened, or 2 years before that happened, is that he never lived to see me write Uncanny X-Men. And that's, and for that reason, that book will always mean a lot to me because of that.
Beat that, Al.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mine's pretty obvious, because I was a big Hulk fan as a kid, and now I'm writing the Hulk, so it's sort of, it's pretty basic. And I've kind of not only talked about this, I've sort of put it in the back of the book, in the little essay in the back of the book. So I mean, everybody knows about that one. I think in terms of characters that I sort of read a lot of as a kid and got to do, and this is sort of Hulk adjacent, but I did mention I was a huge fan of Alpha Flight, because that was like the backup strip in the Secret Wars UK one. And I sort of mentioned this to people as like, yeah, there's a whole generation of British kids whose like big three is like the first Secret Wars, Alpha Flight, and the James DeMatteis Iceman miniseries, which was like the other backup, where Iceman cancels out his own existence by like doing a Back to the Future in reverse than his parents. And he gets his own dad killed before he's even born, and it's like, well, now you don't exist, and like Oblivion appears in his tablecloth, and it's this huge thing. And so Puck out of Alpha Flight is a big favourite character of mine, and I finally feel like I got to like give him the big speech and the sort of give him the kind of heroic profile I feel like he's sort of always deserved. Another big favourite is Rocket Raccoon, which was another, I think that was a backup in Transformers, so again, the reprint, so I got to have some fun with him as well, and like kind of bring back all of the stuff nobody talks about anymore, like Half-World and the clowns and the walrus who replaces his teeth with lasers and all of that stuff. But yeah, the big one for me is Puck. So
I don't know if I mentioned this, but I like Spider-Man. So I got to write dozens of comics with Spider-Man in it, which was, that in and of itself was amazing. Speaking of amazing, like one of the other characters that I got to write a fair amount of that really excited me to get to write was Firestar. That Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon. It's not great, but it was all we had in the early '80s, and by God, I loved it. So getting to write a lot of Firestar was great. I put her in Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. I put her in Young Allies, and I got to write a one-shot with her, and another story that I did with Mike Mayhew with her and Justice going up against Loki. So that was a treat. Also, Mike Norton, the artist, and I, we co-created a character for Marvel called Gravity, and we made Gravity, thank you, like we made Gravity because we were Spider-Man fans, and we kind of wanted to replicate that 80s Roger Stern Spider-Man era where he's like, you know, going to school and living on his own and dating and stuff like that. And so we made Spider-Man his favorite superhero, and he got to meet Spider-Man at the end of the miniseries, and to us that was like vicariously meeting Spider-Man through our creation. And then probably the most fun I had doing something with characters that I grew up with was when I wrote Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. It's a series that takes place in its own continuity, so I get to kind of do whatever I want. So all of the cheesy like villains and characters from the 70s Spider-Man comics would appear. Like there's a character called Big Wheel, who's a guy who drives a giant wheel. There was Rocket Racer, who was a kid with a magnetic skateboard he could go up walls with. We had Mindworm in there, who was this weird little looking dude who had like some kind of psychic energy vampirism, and several other of those kinds of characters. It's like, which were the most outlandish and cheesy characters from then? Lightmaster was another one, had a weird costume. So I got to put all that stuff in there, and that was a blast for me.
Were there any things that you maybe